there, how you doing? Welcome to the debut episode of The Boss Lady. My name is Ndero Ganga. I am your host. We had taken a break to re-strategize, go back to the drawing board and find a way in which we can bring this show bigger, better, quality guests and creating a circle for women in business. We are back and we're excited to be here on your radio. My name again is Ndero Ganga and today we debut the show with a phenomenal guest. Right before we came on air, our producer and I were talking about her and we were saying how she sounds so serious and executive while she's on air. But when you meet her in person, my oh my, what a fantastic woman, what a phenomenal person, what a cool spirit. Her name is Zuba Mutesi, and she's a celebrated multidisciplinary and multi-talented creative. She is an event host, and she's hosted some of the biggest musical acts on the African continent. She's a TV host. She's done links for basketball in Africa League. And Zuba, she says she's not a dancer. She enjoys dancing. Oh, how humble she is. But she's been on the stage with some of the most acclaimed dancers on the African continent. Zuba, welcome to the Boss Lady.
Intro. What an intro. I think I'm going to just keep like that snippet of the recording and listen to that like every morning. I'll be like, yeah, that's me.
That's me.
Thank you, Andiro. It's such an honor to be here. And shout out to you for creating such a wonderful, wonderful space. I cannot wait to see all the other phenomenal ladies that are going to be featured. And I'm excited. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I want to ask you, because we can introduce you from the outside, from your accolades, but when you sit back with yourself, who is Zuba? How do you see yourself?
Ooh-wee.
How would you like to be perceived?
That is, that's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
You know when you enter a job interview and they're like, so tell me about yourself. I'd say I am a creative. I am a multifaceted being. That's strictly based off of the fact that I have so many passions that drive me and I do my best to integrate them into my life as best as I can. I was laughing about this the other day with one of my siblings and I was like, I'm trying to break bread off of every single skill and talent that I have. And so far, I think that's been going strong. I would say I am a very loving and empathetic human being. That's why a lot of the work that I do deals with people, deals with interaction, because I'm intrigued by humans, the way we operate, the way we think, the way we, interact with different cultures, different concepts. So it's exciting to be in a space that allows me to connect with people of different walks, different places. I'm a mental health enthusiast and I speak on it so passionately. I'm also a writer. I have a blog that revolves around mental health. I'm a big advocate for that, especially given our context and just the need for that to be recognized. Outside of that, I'm just a chill babe, man.
Yeah.
I'm just a chill, regular babe.
There's nothing regular about you. There is nothing regular about Zuba Mutesi. And you've summed it up really well. And at the core of it, you mentioned creativity. You're creative. How did you come into this space? Has it always been something that is inside you or is something that you grew into?
It's actually quite interesting. I've grown up around creatives. My mother is a creative. She's in the fashion, arts, textile industry. So I have been around art, different forms, being exposed to different cultures through her work. So that part of me has always been there. But actually, funny enough, everything that you see me doing now was never part of my career plans. It was never something that I ever fathomed doing. I was more on the tech side. I was more of a techie. I used to code, I used to learn how to program, all of that fun stuff. And I switched into the creative industry or was more inclined to exploring the creative industry, I think towards the second year of my uni. That's when I switched majors. I started off as a computer science major and then I switched over to communications and I also have another degree in gender and women's studies. So once I entered communications, it just opened the door to so much. And because I was already writing, I loved dabbling with content. I was like, let me see what this is about. So that was the launch of it all. So when I moved back home in 2021, I was thrown into the creative industry, if I can say. Like my first gig, which was never planned, first of all, I was literally in the audience enjoying. I came, I had bought my ticket, I'd come like everybody else. And then my guy who had put on the show calls me. He's like, I need you now. I'm like, okay. I go backstage. It's like, look, we have a technical difficulty and I need you to carry the crowd. I said, what? Carry the crowd to where? I ain't never done this before. And that's literally not what I came here for. Handed me the mic. He was like, do your thing. And that's literally where we started.
Talk to me about your growth simultaneously with the growth of the creative industry in Rwanda.
I feel like one of the things that helped propel all of this is COVID. In as much as the pandemic was one that shook all societies across the world and made us adjust, it made the digital space one that people weren't going to leave, because that's what was bringing us together at that point. And when you have something that brings people together, you have to realize that there's several audiences that you're touching, and you need to see who needs what, where, and when, and how you can fill in that gap. So that's when my social media kind of took off, because I used to share these little mental health reminders on videos, and some of them would like go crazy, like they'd blow up. And I'm like, oh, so you guys, they're like, yeah, these are reminders that we need. And it just doesn't feel like you're speaking at us. You're speaking like someone who's experiencing this with us. So that, like, we kind of grew together in the sense that as the digital space and the influencer market and the content creating market was rising, as was my career and my visibility. So I feel like as things were being more and more recognized, I can say I fell in at the right time. It was my blessing that when it was starting, that's when also the digital space just took over, because that's what people were now relying on as a means of connection, interaction, information, and etc.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned social media, because we were even talking about this, and we live in a day and age, particularly when you're creative, you have to put yourself out there. And I was telling you, when I'm following your show, actually, why didn't you plug Zuba? Zuba is, first of all, queen of the airwaves, queen on the microphone, and she calls it Z frequency.
Yes,
every single day, bringing sunshine on Royal FM.
Yes,
mid-morning, she is your bestie, your friend, your partner during the mid-morning. And I follow you on radio when you're on, and you do these little snippets of the show online, particularly on your Instagram stories, and you're asking people if the music is hot or not. And even if somebody didn't know you're on radio, when they're following you online now, they get to see you do your thing.
Yes.
So I just want to know from your perspective, because this is an experience you've lived, what's the integration between digital media, putting yourself out there, and your growth as a creative for the creatives that are listening?
I think it's something that you have to teach yourself. Because when you're in the digital space, when you're into content creation, in the creative space, your best bet is how you market yourself. Right? So you have to be able to communicate your strengths. You have to be able to show your best work from jump. And that means that when you go on my page, you can tell what I do, right? I am in the influencer space. I am in the media space. So that when someone views your social media, for example, because that's usually the first place that people start, right? Not everyone will have a link to your website if you have one, or your portfolio or your CV. So if I go on your social media and you're in that space, I have to be able to know, oh, this is what you do. This is how I can find you. So for me, it was one of those where, number one, I had to get out of my head, because to a certain extent, when you're marketing yourself, there's a fine line that you're playing on when you say, am I boasting or am I marketing myself? So you have to understand that marketing yourself sometimes requires you to boast about yourself, because there's nobody else who will do that for you in the beginning, until, of course, you get the traction and the acknowledgement around you, so that people can back it up, right? So the first person to back yourself up has to be you. So there's a high importance for someone to be able to leverage all the technology that we have, especially. We're very privileged to grow up in an age where technology is one of those that you find at your fingertips. If you don't have a smartphone, you're probably going to see TV, radio, even print media to a certain extent. You engage with all of those, but how well do you leverage them? How well can you use all those different platforms so that if you log on to this, I can tell Ondiro does this. If I log on to this, I can see Ondiro's feedback is this, you know? So you have to be able to boast on yourself, but in a professional way. You know what I mean? So that means either having a very clean Instagram or a very clean website portfolio, having easy ways for people to contact you, to find you, being open to interaction, being open to feedback. I feel like for me, that's one thing that has helped me a lot is being open to feedback. I do not mind you coming to criticize me. The only time I mind is if it's intertwined with disrespect, then we'll have to align
Have a
there.
conversation about it.
Exactly. But if you come at it the right way, there's so much you can do with all the platforms that you have available to you.
And one of the things about you that I find very remarkable is the fact that you've been able to build such a solid, reputable, and relatable brand. And on top of that, it's bankable. Because, girl, you've been in your influencer bag, you've been in your event host bag, you've been in your dancer bag, you've been in your TV bag, you've been in your radio. Zuba,
Yes,
by the way, for
ma'am.
those who can't see her, she's wearing gold. She's dripping gold. That's how you know the brand is bankable.
Wow.
Outside of building a brand, how do you make it commercially viable, particularly if you are the brand?
You have to look at what's needed and see what skill sets you have to fill that gap. So, for example, for me, I felt like one thing that was needed when I started, getting the attention and visibility that I have on social media, it all started with me talking about my mental health journey, sharing small snippets, little reminders that, to someone it may sound like a basic piece of information, but it's just one of those reminders that when you see, you're like, I actually needed to see that. I needed to hear that. So in that sense, it was already very relatable because everyone goes through struggles. Everyone, has a day where you just need someone to tell you like, hey, you're doing great. And me being the person that I am, it came very easily because it wasn't work to me. I'm that person on camera, off camera, on the mic, off the mic. So in that sense, I was filling a gap that was there, and it was one that you're never not going to need someone to remind you that you're doing well. You're never not going to need someone to remind you that, it's okay to not feel okay. It's okay not to be okay. And also another thing is, I don't want to say like this because I know there's plenty more, but given the space we're in, I also want to open the door for people who look like me, right? There's a certain idea about, we have beauty standards and all of that. There's a certain idea of what a TV or radio face voice, presenter, host, MC has to look like. And to a certain extent, I challenge that because you're not used to your thicker woman being on stage, moving around like that. Like people still tell me that, like, bro, I'm like, we can still do it. We can still get down to it. So also challenging certain stereotypes, certain misconceptions that we may have, certain cultural nuances that may revolve around these spaces. So also breaking those boundaries so people can be more comfortable. Because I'm not going to be the only presenter. I'm sure there's like 10s, 20s, 30s other girls who want to step into the same shoes. And if you make it more relatable for someone to look at you doing what you do, you also open the door for other people to explore that talent. And I enjoy being that person because if you come up to me and you ask me, I will answer. I'll be very open with you. But also at the same time, I also want to feel like I want people to feel more comfortable entering these spaces because these are spaces that are still very new to our environment, still very new to our society. So it's also one of those getting the people acclimated to this and essentially showing people that this is something you can invest in because it does yield results.
And that result part, how do you get those results? And what do results look like? Because a time comes, particularly now as we get into the money conversation, there was a time in Kenya where creators are being told, we're paying you with experience, we're paying you with exposure, right? And they were asking, how many exposures does it take to pay rent, right? So what kind of results as a creative should you aspire for so that when you sit on the table with these decision makers that have the money, you can get something out of it?
I think, first of all, you have to align your ducks on a personal note. So if, for example, I'm going to be sitting with people who are going to be investing in me, I'm going to have my portfolio ready. This is something that you put together and get several rounds of feedback. And you have to strip yourself of the mindset of being biased towards your own work, because when you're getting feedback, you have to take it as it is. You ask for it. Some of it is going to be sweet, some of it is going to be a bit spicy, and you have to kind of realign yourself. So number one, get as much feedback from the people around you so that by the time you reach those spaces and you're seated at that table, you're sure of yourself. I can sit down and tell you, this is me, this is Zuba, this is what I bring to the table. These are my key performance indicators. This is how we can gauge whether or not this collaboration is a success. If it is not a success, this is how we're going to go about it. If it is a success, we build on it this way. You have to always have a game plan. Having a game plan is being sure of your business, your brand, and being sure of how to gauge your results, because it's not every campaign or every client that I've worked with and we exceed the goal or we reach the targets that are set. But because when we have that initial conversation, I'm like, look, in the case that we don't reach these targets, there's a point of pivot. In the case that we reach the target and we exceed it, we still also pivot and find ways to elevate it to another level. So you have to be sure of yourself and be sure of how you communicate your value. Another thing that I've realized is do not like lessen yourself to accept certain things. Like I'll give one example that to me it was comical, but to everybody else, like they had a field day with it. So there was one interaction that I had, and I feel like the only mistake I made in that point was my mistake was not blurring this person's contact. Someone reached out to me, trying to collaborate with me. And the manner in which they reached out to me, there was a lack of respect, right? And respect to me is the bare minimum. You have to come to me correct, because if you come at me that way, I can only imagine what our collaboration is going to look like. So I declined that job, but it became like I'm too prideful or I'm too good for some work. No, I'm not too good for some work, but I'm too good for disrespect. I know my value, and you wouldn't have reached out to me if you didn't know my value. So when you communicate to me, attach the respect to the value. And even if if you don't even see the value, respect is always literally the bare minimum. So for me, in that sense, if I didn't know my value and it was just about, making money and being in different spaces, I would have taken the job. But there's some things that I won't do because I know it doesn't align with who I am as a person, who I am as a brand, and my trajectory. Because yes, we're all trying to break bread and make money, and even me, I'm trying to secure the biggest bag I can, but it's not going to come at the cost of my value, my brand, my moral compass to a certain extent.
And I like that you've come so of age with yourself and in the creative space, and it's been a roller coaster for you. But I like the space that you're at. As we talk about money, remuneration, and getting value from being a creative, I want you to take me back to the first paid gig that you did.
Yes.
How that conversation went and what kind of check was put on the table. I'm putting you on the spot.
The first paid gig I got. Yes. Okay. My first paid gig, actually, it was quite smooth. I feel like I'm one of those people, I'm very blunt, right? I don't like to beat about the bush. If I feel some type of way, I'll tell you, I'll be like, that's a crazy price. You're funny. But I'm also very privileged and blessed to have people around me within my immediate circle that advise me. My sister is very much into the financial literacy, financial freedom, cashless. That's her gig. So as someone who's worked in some of the most prominent institutions in the world and held incredible office, she's usually the first person that I go to. And she's one that has taught me to look at my value in terms of how much work I'm putting in, how much I feel I should get out of, and how much of that I can invest into the next phase of my life. So with that advice, I go into every, agreement thinking, how much work am I putting into that? I put a value to that. How much am I getting out of this? Because sometimes I accept a lower fee because of the network that it puts me in or the opportunities that it sets me up for. So sometimes it's a give or take. In some spaces, when I know I'm just fully giving my energy and it's not much being given back to me, the price is going to be up. The price is going to be up. But if I know that you're putting me like in spaces where I'm able to network with different people, different networks, tap into different opportunities, I would decrease the price because I know there's an added value that comes with me being on that stage, being on that mic. So I have to weigh out the options of how much am I putting out, how much am I getting in. If my put out is more than in, prices up. If it's a balanced, it'll be a medium. If I'm getting more than I'm putting out, the price can be very low, but not too low. Okay, a girl still gotta eat.
Yeah, and that sets up the conversation for the rate card, because this is something that creatives go back and forth with a lot. And I've seen instances where it's very easy to get undercut. Like, if you're not gonna take it, there's another creative who's going to take it. So how do you? Because you have built such a reputable brand for yourself that if Zuba Mutesi says, this is what I'm taking, that's what she's taking. And you know why you went to her. But there's a big pool of creators that are coming up. And right now, social media platforms like TikTok have made it very easy for literally every creative to get a shot at blowing up without necessarily taking the time to build that community and have tangible and bankable value behind them. So what goes into building a reasonable but acceptable red card for yourself while dealing with these corporates?
I think you have to start with doing your research. There's a lot of the creative industry in Rwanda is on the rise. But if you look at countries like Uganda, you look at Kenya, they're a bit above us because you can also see a lot of these major brands collaborating with creatives from those spaces. So it also starts with making your research, being able to ask your comrades in the space, how do I go about this? How do I value myself here and there? And I'll give credit to one amazing lady. Her name is Ivy. Just Ivy is a fantastic, fantastic lady. I met her only once, and she spoke so much words of life into what I was doing, strictly based off of her seeing me once. This is why I tell you, when there's certain opportunities that come about, your rate can go a little bit lower because the value added there is much higher. Because I was in a room with some of Africa's top women entrepreneurs and leaders in multiple sectors, whether it be private and government. So in such a space, the rate can change. So you have to do your research and ask people in the same space as you, how are you doing this? How are you approaching these collaborations? How do I communicate my value? And also seeking feedback in the sense that when you look at my socials or when you look at my platform, am I positioning myself the right way so that the price reflects what you see? So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. And even on the side of creatives that are well established, be open to people asking you those questions. Be open to sharing that knowledge, because I'm a firm believer that there's enough cake for all of us to have a slice. What resonates for my audience may not resonate for Ondiro's audience. So in that moment, if I approach Ondiro and I ask you for advice, you can't you can, it's your choice, but I feel like you can't hold back strictly based off of the fact that we're in competition, but competition also means there's more investment coming in. More investment coming in means that we can both rack up our prices. Competition is good. Competition is needed, So in that sense, my top, I'd say my top advice that I would have for anyone like trying to build their rate card: do your research, ask questions from the people that you're in the same sector with. Second of all, put together your portfolio, right? Look at your portfolio and also take yourself out of your own mind and your own frame. And then when you look at it, if you were to hire yourself, where would you place your work? Right? Because you can't say, even if you're very good at what you do, you can't rack up the price insanely just because you're very good at what you do. There's still other people in the same industry. So there is still, you have to be aware of that competition and be realistic with your prices. Number 3 is flexibility. You can share a rate card with someone and they can share a proposition with you where they may not meet the number that you want, but they can give you another value added. For example, if I'm going to work with a brand I'm a brand ambassador for Zuri. So if, for example, Zuri approaches me and the number that they give me is not what I want or not what my rate card reflects, but you tell me, you know what, Zuba, if you're a brand ambassador, yes, we'll remunerate you with this, which doesn't, fully meet what you want, but we'll give you, salon services for free. We'll give you this, you'll get an allotment of this. That is a value added. So that even if you're not remunerating me in the number I want, you're still compensating for it in another way, So be open to also being remunerated in things that add value to you. If it doesn't, then you have to sometimes walk away. There's some opportunities you're going to have to learn to walk away from because it may or may not also decrease your value. So you also have to be aware of where you're putting your portfolio and energy forward.
Yeah. As we almost come to a close, I have 2 questions for you. You mentioned Ivy in the context of just the importance of women having community, right? And I want to put this to you. In your experience so far, what is the value or which kind of women do you need in your circle as a creative to get you to where you want to go?
Ooh, that's such a great question because I'm not going to lie to you. I've had more trouble connecting with women in that space. And I feel like once you get to the likes of, for example, Ivy's calibers above me. She's been doing this for ages. And I feel like people who are more seasoned in the space have experienced more of what I'm experiencing. Therefore, when they come to you, it's coming from a place of knowledge and actually wanting to elevate you. Whereas for some people who, when we're on the same level, if I may say, you might see me as a threat, and that will hinder our interaction. Whereas for me, I don't walk into any situation looking someone as if they're a threat. If you're more experienced than me, I'm taking that as a learning experience. I'm going to be next to you, asking you, what do I do better? Give me some feedback. Is this going okay? I'll ask you 1,000,001 questions, right? Because I want to be better. I want to do better. And I want to learn from you. If I'm with someone who's more seasoned, I'm going to act like I'm stupid because I want to learn from them. I'm not going to take it as a threat. Because me already being in the same space with you is because that I have value, right? We both have value. That's why we're both occupying that space. So I think you need to be around people, number one, who are very secure within themselves, I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of the people who feel that, someone may be a threat to you, it comes from a place of insecurity and not being fully sure or aware of your capabilities. Yes, imposter syndrome is very real. Even I battle with it. But at the end of the day, I have to remind myself that I'm occupying this space because of a certain value that I bring. And every time I remind myself that, it grounds me. And I'm like, okay, I'm not perfect. I may not be the best, but there's a level of value I bring. So you need to be around people who are aware of themselves, aware of the value they bring, but people who are also open. I like people who are open, such that if I sit with you on Diro, right, on and off air, and I hear something maybe that you worked on, I'm like, Ondiro, I listened to this and I feel like maybe this wasn't really you. If I'm not wrong, I would advise that ABCD, or based off of what I've seen you do, I feel like this would have been reflective of you more. And even then, you see how people react to feedback, and based off of that, you realize whether or not I need you in my circle. Because if you become defensive, there's something there. It goes back to that security within yourself. But if you are secure within yourself, you take it with a grain of salt and you say, you know what? Why would Zuba tell me that? And then you also go back and you realize maybe there's something, because you can take all the advice or you can discard, like everything you can take with a grain of salt. But you also have to realize that not everyone is out for you, right? And when you're around people who feel that way, you become more aware of your flaws than your strengths. So you need to be around people who balance you out well, being around women who are open to criticism, open to feedback, and are very open to giving it to you as well in the most raw and filtered form, because they respect your craft, and most of all, they also want to see you elevate.
I feel like we've sat through a brilliant masterclass of how to build a brand as a creative that is not only strong, reputable, but also bankable. Zuba, before I let you go, what can we expect from you this year? I know you've done your vision board and I know it's big and buzzing. What can we expect from you this year?
2025, I just made my comeback to the airwaves after almost 2 years. So I'm going back to a lot of what, attracted people to Zuba, which is mostly throwing myself also into my mental health work, mental health advocacy, and using my platform for that. Because more than ever, there's never not been a time where we need to talk about it. But now more than ever, given how much the digital space influences a lot of our decisions and influences our interactions, I think it's one of those things that I want to give more space to. And given the platform that I have and knowing that a lot of my audience is young, I want to be one of the people that people go to for that. So coming back to a lot of what made people know Zuba as Zuba. Of course, you see me rocking out at some events here and there. I know summer's going to be an exciting one. There's a lot of exciting things coming up. And last but not least, by popular demand, yes, it's one of those things that I get asked about to do quite a lot, but I wanted to take my time with it, which is YouTube. I'm going to be dropping more content on my YouTube, talking about my mental health journey, having different people on there, opening that conversation and just being me really well and truly, because I feel like a lot of people see my personality on my social media and they want it in the long form. But before I threw myself into that, I wanted to make sure I had the time, I had the space, I had the patience for it. So more content, be ready for me to be all up in your face.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And before we close this, we just want to give you your flowers.
Wow.
You're one of the trailblazing creatives in this country. And it's been such a pleasure to see you do your thing on these stages that we've seen you step-footed. You're pacifying the way for creatives that are coming after you.
Thank you.
And that's really commendable. It's not easy, but you're doing it. And also something else, ever since I interacted with you from the first time, you're very open, you're very supportive, and that's the kind of spirit that we need amongst women. And I hope that this new year brings good tidings to you.
I hope all of us.
Every single thing that you lay your hands on succeed. And I hope that just outside of Rwanda, because all the big events are coming here, but I hope that your talent gets to shine on the global stage. You're at a time when African artists are blowing up, and I hope that that is part of the plan for you.
Thank you, Andiro. Oh my goodness. Like I said, I'm going to record this and keep this somewhere like my alarm. But
morning affirmations.
Thank you. I think you're quite exceptional as well. The first time me and Andiro met was behind a mic and we're debating such an interesting topic. And from then, I absolutely love your energy. I love how passionate you are about, pushing other women forward, pushing the narrative forward, and giving them the recognition that they deserve. So shout out to you as well, sis.
Thank you so much. And to you, listener, thank you so much for listening in. Let us know what you think about this conversation. You can always reach out to us via social media platforms, Zuba.
You can find me on Zuba_Mutesi on pretty much everything.
And you can find me on Ondero Ganga. This has been The Boss Lady. We'll see you again next time.